So Texans linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair got suspended for his hit on Trevor Lawrence, and after issuing an apology prior to getting suspended, he later had some thoughts to share with the world that were a little surprising in my opinion. So I've got to talk about that, Diontae Johnson being a waste of a trade for Baltimore so far, as well as some of my favorite matchups for Week 14 of the NFL season, right after... Alright, first up, the situation involving Diontae Johnson and the Baltimore Ravens got even weirder, stranger yesterday when it was surprisingly announced that the team was suspending him without pay for one game because of, quote, conduct detrimental to the team. Well, that conduct was apparently him refusing to enter the game when asked to do so against the Eagles. So a coach was like, yo, get out there. And he said, nah, I'm good. Well, that is definitely insane. And it makes sense why there's some repercussions, because how can you tell a coach no when they ask you to go in and play if you are active and dressed out? This whole situation with Diontae has been bizarre from the start, honestly. The Ravens traded for him ahead of the deadline, swapping late-round picks with the Panthers to do so, basically getting him for nothing. That's quite an inexpensive price to pay for what everyone thought would be another deployable weapon in what was already one of the best offenses in the league. Now, to be clear, I figured there would be some ramp-up period, but nothing like this. He's only been targeted 5 times, catching one of those for 6 yards in 5 games. And in those 5 games played, he's played just 39 snaps in those 5 games, with him not playing a single snap against Philly despite being active because I guess he just didn't want to play. He's clearly frustrated with his lack of involvement so far on the offense, but refusing to play in a game is not the best look for a guy on the final year of his contract. I mean, that's honestly probably why he's pissed off at them in the first place. He can't boost his value in free agency if he's not on the field. I could even see a scenario playing out where he ends up getting released by Baltimore somewhere in the next couple of weeks. The Ravens are on a bye this week, then the following one is the game that Diontae will be ineligible to play in, but since he's suspended by the team and not the league, if they do release him this week and he signs with another team, he can still play right away. I think that's probably the best thing to do for both parties. Just cut ties, move on, sayonara. Will it happen? I'm not really sure, but Diontae getting to sign somewhere else where he could actually see the field, then the Ravens would get rid of some negativity in the locker rooms, probably a win-win. Either way, it's just an odd situation all around, with Diontae potentially playing for yet a third team this season if he does indeed get released. Next up, Trevor Lawrence was placed on IR yesterday following that concussion that came as a result of the cheap shot from Texans linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair on Sunday. More on him in a second, but it has since been reported that while Trevor is technically eligible to return from IR Week 18, he's likely going to miss the remainder of the season, as he's also getting shoulder surgery to address an injury he suffered earlier this season. It makes sense. The Jags are not playing well. They're 2-10, and it's in their best interest at this point in time to try and land the highest draft pick possible, so no need to rush back Trevor at all, especially for just one game. Someone who will be missing 3 games is the aforementioned Azeez Al-Shaair, who was issued a suspension from the NFL, a 3-game suspension following that hit on Trevor Lawrence. The reason for the length of the suspension, by the way, is because the NFL deemed him a repeat offender, as he's had a couple of unsportsmanlike penalties earlier this season. But this is where things get interesting. Along with the suspension, the NFL's Vice President of Football Operations, John Runyon, had some pretty strong words for Al-Shaair in a statement saying, quote, "Your lack of sportsmanship and respect for the game of football and those who play, coach, and enjoy watching it is troubling and does not reflect the core values of the NFL." He then went on to write, quote, "Your continued disregard for NFL playing rules puts the health and safety of both you and your opponents in jeopardy and will not be tolerated." Well, those were some pretty freaking strong words, and those words were not taken too kindly by people within the Texans organization. Head coach DeMeco Ryans publicly defended Azeez, but the person that drew the most attention was GM Nick Caserio, who was heated during his press conference and not only stood up for Azeez, but also ripped the NFL, calling it BS basically for lacking consistency in how they hand out punishments.
I mean, quite frankly, there's no consistency at all relative to the level of discipline that's been handed down. So when you go back, let's look at this season. Branch ejected against Green Bay, plays the next week against us. Derwin ejected, all right, got suspended for one game. Some of the commentary that has been made about his character, about the person that he is, about what his intentions are, I mean, quite frankly, it's
he does make some good points about the lack of consistency based on the players that he mentioned, but I think in this case, the league was really trying to send a message, and that's why the punishment was so severe. You cannot hit like that anymore. There's no place for it in the NFL in 2024. But either way, you would think if you were Azeez and you had the public support of both your GM and your coach, you'd be content to remove yourself from the spotlight and just lay low for a little while. But nope. He's really gone out of his way to do the exact opposite. Last night, he took to Instagram and Twitter and posted a few pictures from the game, as well as this picture of the Joker and an inspirational quote with the caption that said, "If you want me to be your villain, I'll be your villain," with a middle finger emoji, then said, "See you soon." Well, I guess I understand the Joker picture because this was definitely a clown move. It just really isn't the best look when you have the faces of the organization publicly backing you and your character. But with that being said, let me know your thoughts on this 3-game suspension for Al-Shaair in the comments down below. Was it too much, too little? What did you think about his public response? He did issue a public apology for what it's worth, but then the suspension was handed down. And then he followed up with the Joker post that I thought was definitely best left unsaid, or rather unposted. From here, I want to talk about some great games this weekend and some very important ones at that as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. First up, Kirk Cousins is making his return to Minnesota as the 6-6 Falcons take on the 10-2 Vikings Sunday afternoon. Kirk has been on the struggle bus as of late. He's coming off a 4-interception game against the Chargers, and the Falcons have lost 3 games in a row. This may be his last chance to fend off the angry mob that's calling for Michael Penix Jr. to start over him. It's not going to be easy, though. Minnesota's defense does give up the 5th most passing yards, but they have the most interceptions with 18 and are 4th in sacks with 39. Basically, Kirk better be on his P's and Q's, and the Falcons are going to need him to be on those because Minnesota's defense allows the fewest rushing yards per game and ranks 5th in points allowed as well. For that reason, I am picking the Vikings to get the dub over their former quarterback and move to 11-2 on the year. Next up, the 10-2 Buffalo Bills have now won 7 straight, and they're looking to make it 8 as they travel to LA to take on the 6-6 Rams this Sunday. They've got their sights set on the 1 seed as they're just a game behind, technically a game behind KC, but they have the head-to-head tiebreaker. They're coming in with the 2nd highest scoring offense in the league, plus the 6th ranked scoring defense. The Rams defense has been vulnerable at times this season, and they're below average in just about every statistical metric, ranking 21st in points allowed and 25th in yards allowed. I'm looking for James Cook to stay hot and score a touchdown in this one. He's just the 2nd player in franchise history to have more than 10 rushing touchdowns through the first 11 games of a season. Stafford had a slow start to the year with all the injuries to their O-line and star receivers, but since Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua returned in Week 8, Stafford is actually tied for the 2nd most passing touchdowns with 14 since then. Still though, even if Stafford gets rolling a bit, I don't see how their defense is going to be able to get enough stops against such a high-powered Buffalo offense. That's why I'm taking the Bills getting this W. They'll be getting some additional help too, kinda, as they reunited with the longtime Bills safety Micah Hyde. They signed him to the practice squad with the soon-to-be 34-year-old vet saying he's planning on retiring after the season. I have no idea if he plays or not at all this year, but we shall see. And then Seattle and Arizona are meeting for their 2nd time in 3 weeks as the Seahawks just beat the Cardinals 16-6 back in Week 12. Last week, the Cardinals lost a close one to the Vikings, and the Seahawks pulled out a close one over the Jets. That currently has Seattle sitting atop the NFC West at 7-5, though a Cardinals win would actually re-give Arizona the division lead as both teams would be 7-6 with a 1-1 head-to-head record, but the Cardinals would have a better division record. For that to happen though, their offense has to step up. They were 0 for 2 in the red zone, and Kyler threw an ugly pick 6 that basically sealed their fate in the last meeting. Well, if they can take care of the ball, get a couple tutties in the red zone, and James Conner involved as well in the run game, then I like their chances to retake the lead in the division on Sunday, but either way, it should be a very good game to watch. And finally, the 11-1 Chiefs are hosting their division rival in the 8-4 Chargers for what should be a great Sunday night football game. It just might not be the high-scoring Mahomes and Herbert games we've been accustomed to over the years. The Chiefs won by a score of 17-10 in their first meeting back in September, and I'm expecting the score in this one to be pretty similar. The Chargers feature the top-ranked scoring defense in the league, holding opponents to just under 16 points a game. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are 8th in scoring defense, allowing under 20 points a game. Patrick Mahomes has been hot as of late after starting out the season pretty slow. He's thrown for over 250 yards in 5 of their last 6 games, after doing so just twice in their first 6. He also just had 6 touchdowns and 8 interceptions over their first 6 games, but in their last 6, he's thrown 13 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions. And despite playing the top-ranked defense in football, as long as DJ Humphrey starts as their new left tackle, I think Mahomes rises to the occasion in a primetime game against a division opponent and stays hot enough to lead KC to a 12-1 record and remain at the top of the AFC. A W in this game for the Chiefs, by the way, would have them clinch the AFC West for the 9th consecutive season. And there you have it. Those are some of the most intriguing matchups I'm looking for this weekend. Let me know what games you're excited to see. Some score predictions in the comments down below. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.